Gamecock fans, now you can have your coffee and also support the Gamecocks in a championship quest to get to the top of the SEC and the top of the country by going to GamecockCoffee.com and purchasing Rise and Shine New Orleans Roast Gourmet Coffee. All of your purchases go to benefit Garnet Trust and put NIL dollars in the coffer of the Gamecocks official NIL collective. Check it out today and support the Gamecocks NIL. Morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, the year of our Lord 2025, and this is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining me this morning. Appreciate everyone always tuning in Monday through Friday. Most Monday through Fridays. Most of the time, it's up by 8 a.m. Eastern, podcast version on the Inside the Gamecocks podcast channel, which is available on Spotify, Audible, and Apple. Also, you can catch it on YouTube, the YouTube channel that all of our lovely content stays on, Chief Sports South Carolina, home of Gamecock coverage and more. Going to get into some South Carolina high school football, all that good stuff here directly. So that's awesome. We are very happy with what we've done at Chief Sports South Carolina. Also, if you listen to JC and Morgan, be sure to check out Josh Pate on the recent JC and Morgan. That's also on our YouTube channel. Also, the YouTube channel College Football Forever Chief. It's at College Football Forever Chief. That's kind of going to be part of Chief Sports, but for more broad college football coverage. You know, with South Carolina, we like to focus on our local things, and then that's kind of a national, broad-based, SEC-focused, if you will, college football channel with JC and Morgan, and then some other fun stuff that we're going to have on there for those of you that I know love to consume all the college football content you can handle. We have the Gamecock Smorgasbord with Alex Jones from the BigSpur.com on the show with Phil and I. That's every Thursday now. It's always a good conversation, but if you want a college football smorgasbord, College Football Chief is for you. It's in its infancy. There'll be a website for that as well as the Chief Sports Network launching here directly. So we got a lot of things going on. Also want to remind everybody about the BigSpur.com. That's kind of my home on the internet for Gamecock coverage. You can interact with me there if you're a VIP member. You can read all the articles. The message board is a great read. It's what we call a freemium message board. So a lot of the posts do not require you to be a member to read. You have to be a member to post and interact and all that. And some of the posts are VIP, but it's always good to, look at the traffic numbers, and there's a lot of people that like to read the message board. In fact, the feedback we've gotten is that 80% of your paid members never post. They just like to read and consume. So we certainly appreciate all that across the board. You see the visor if you're watching Garnet Trust. Obviously, buy some coffee or popcorn, GamecockCoffee.com. If you're a Garnet Trust member, you're on their email list. You probably got something about a great prescription card deal you can get to also support Garnet Trust, 1801 Media, all that. So that's out the way. Baseball team will wrap up midweek play tonight, 6:30 against Winthrop. They have not lost a midweek game all year. So I don't know. Winthrop's a pretty good team from that level. So we'll see if they can get a W. And then LSU comes to town Thursday through Saturday, which probably will not be a lot of fun for anybody. So if you missed Jamie Bradford's monologue about the state of the baseball program, that's up on our YouTube channel as well, cut from the morning show yesterday. So housekeeping all out of the way, and going to talk a little football today, just like we do every day here on Coffee. And I want to bring up something, because we go through with this podcast, and it is a podcast. It's not a live show, different than a podcast. I'm learning the difference between those two things. Coffee is supposed to be just football, kind of a quick look at different topics. And there's only so many topics, broad based. You can only break down the depth chart so many times. But what I like to do is revisit things, especially as things change. Well, what's changed? because today we're going to talk about the secondary. Well, what's changed in the secondary? South Carolina did lose Nick Emanware to the draft, second rounder. O'Donnell Fortune signed with the Giants as an undrafted free agent. He was a starting corner. There really wasn't any position on the field except quarterback and offensive tackle that South Carolina did not lose a starter. Nickel, obviously, there's only one starting nickel, so Jelon Kilgore. But, as far as the secondary goes, it did not escape losses personnel wise. Torian Gray, the coach of the secondary, has a tendency to just kind of reload every year. Carolina's been pretty good back there for a long time, ever since Beamer took over. It was crazy that the year before Beamer got here in 2020, there were 3 NFL players in the final secondary under Will Muschamp. Nobody played defense in college football that well that season. But obviously, South Carolina was just downright awful. Will Muschamp's last game, in a twist of irony, was 59-42. That's the Lane Kiffin clipboard game. Gamecocks lost. I always thought it was pretty interesting that, when you hired Will Muschamp, the first game, South Carolina goes up and everybody's talking about how Vandy's going to beat them, and Carolina pulls it out at the end. Tough, gritty, hard-nosed, low-scoring game, right? So that's what kind of you think you're getting with Muschamp. And so the first game was a 13-10 win on the road in an SEC game, and then the last game was a 59-42 loss. Go figure. So another weird thing about that period. But, they kind of taped it together for the first year, and then players got better. And then South Carolina's been pretty good in the secondary, just overall. Lots of guys drafted. Nick was obviously the latest one. Disappointed that O'Donnell didn't get drafted, OD. But it kind of is what it is. This program should always have good defensive backs. There are defensive backs in the footprint just about every year. Sometimes you have to go find them, like a Judge Collier, or Nick Emanware even, or going all the way back to Darius Rush. They kind of pop up, but the state puts out. There's defensive backs just about every year. Obviously, Jazavian Currents is the latest one, along with Tamarian Watkins. You got Polo Anderson at Dorman, who's probably going to Clemson. Safeties this year, corners and safety. You got them. You got the guys. Jaquel Hallman, a guy that everybody was kind of wondering if he was going to be a defensive back or a running back. A linebacker or a running back, and he's a DB in the secondary. So we will, we will always sort of look at the secondary as a position where South Carolina should be pretty salty. It's just kind of been that way, and certainly there's been some lean years, but usually they've got players back there, and this season is no different. It's actually even with the losses of Emanware and Fortune. Fortune. I almost called him Fortune, like it's St. Patrick's Day. O'Donnell Fortune. But with Fortune and Emanware going, it's still a group you look at and go, goodness, they got some players, they got depth. You're not going to be able to replace Nick though. So like as far as player for player, he's just a freak. And, sometimes you're not always going to have a freaky 6'4" safety that can run a 4.5, although the staff does try. I mean, I think you look at some of the guys they've recruited and are recruiting. I mentioned Currents for the 2026 class. Kendall Daniels Jr. is a freshman that's 6'4", 220. DeMarcus Leach at corner, a taller kid at about 6'2" and a half. So they try, they want freaks back there. But it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes a 5'10" guy is better than your taller guy because he can turn and run and move his hips and jump and all that stuff. But you look at this group, and it's a good group. They did add 2 corners from the transfer portal, and Miles Norwood from Ball State, and also obviously Brandon Cisse from North Carolina State. And so that kind of beefed up the numbers a little bit and gave them some quality depth, so you don't have to rely on freshmen, God willing, and the creek don't rise, because it would take probably a lot of injuries and things like that on the back end. So we've talked about the secondary here before. It's been a topic of this podcast. We've broken down the roster. We've broken down the depth chart. All that good. So what's changed? Well, spring practice has changed, is what's changed. And the players went through 2 weeks of workouts. There are newcomers. I mentioned the two transfer portal guys. I also mentioned Daniels. He's a true freshman. DeMarcus Leach from Abbeville is a true freshman that went through spring. Emory Floyd left in the transfer portal. He was a depth guy. He's going to go where he can play. I believe he went to App State with Dowell Loggins, and I think he'll get on the field there. But this group, there were some changes and some risers, quite frankly, in the secondary, and then there are some things to still figure out. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But there were some guys that really made the move, and they did all this too without Vakari Swain, who I think most of us penciled in as a starter this year. He was part of sort of a three-man rotation. They bounced in Fortune, Collier, Swain, and kind of rotated those three guys all year at cornerback, and it was a good year at corner. I think there were games, obviously, where receivers made plays, LSU, Clemson, but that's going to happen. I I think what you want is just to not make mental mistakes, which only happened a couple of times last season. Akron was a game that one touchdown Akron scored was a mistake, and I think at the Oklahoma game, maybe somebody made a mistake, but that happens. They're called busts. There's I mentioned the 2020 team. That was Bust City. I don't. They were very confused that season about who to cover, and that's why you had guys running wide open. And they say in the secondary you have to have a short memory because those things happen. And I think sometimes when another team completes a big pass play, sometimes we all focus on that rather than quarterback never throws to that guy's side because the guy's covered. It's a sometimes it's like the offensive line, especially at corner, because it's if they don't throw to your side of the field, you don't get much action, all that good stuff. But it was a good year. But what about this year? What about 2025? So we got to move on from last season, as good as it was, and as many good players as they had, and focus on this coming year. And so during the spring, there were three risers. I would say risers, like guys that there were always expectations, but probably maybe surpassed some expectations. Guys that from contacts and people close to the program, and really my own eyes sometimes, like especially with the video from the spring game. Guys that to me maybe you look a little better than I anticipated. And there's a newcomer in here, and then some veterans and all that good stuff. And so the first guy I would call a riser is Peyton Williams, the veteran safety from Texas, Rockwall, Texas. We've seen Peyton a few times. We've seen him in 2022 come in against Tennessee, I think as a true freshman. And somebody got hurt. I think it was Eamon Warriors, got kicked out because of targeting, something like that. And against that bunch that was throwing it all over the field, Peyton came in and played pretty well. Had a pass breakup. People were talking about him. So spur of the moment things, we've seen him play. Vanderbilt last year, DQ Smith was a late scratch, and DQ could not play. And so Peyton started, played the whole game, and that to me was his best game. The Tennessee thing was kind of a moment in time. I thought as far as being physical, coverage wise, just playing fast, looking like I thought that was his best game. And then of course, unfortunately in the bowl, Nick opts out at halftime. Peyton goes in. I would not say that was his best game, the bowl. I thought they really missed Nick, especially late in the game with run stoppage and things like that. The bowl, it was a weird game. I tell people in the bowl, in the Citrus Bowl, Carolina lost because they got upset by Illinois, and Illinois is a team that will pull an upset. I've watched them. That's how they do things. They're a lot like Mark Stoops' Kentucky at its best, if that makes sense. Where if you don't play your best game, there's a chance you're getting beat. And it's not going to be pretty. There's going to be a lot of frustration, but you're going to get beat and not scoring and then giving up play, not getting them off the field. People ask me all the time, well, I got upset. You get upset sometimes. And all the ingredients for an upset were there for Illinois. So not Peyton's best game. Kind of thrust out there. Was not as surprisingly good, right? But he has a shot to win the job and replace Nick. And I'd say he's the odds-on favorite. He's on my projected depth chart as the starter opposite DQ Smith at safety. I think that when you look at kind of his spring and you talk to people, he had a good one. You know, it wasn't a given that he was just going to slide in. David Bucci is another player, redshirt freshman, or I'm sorry, sophomore, because he played in every game on special teams that has a shot back there. Kelvin Hunter is another guy in his second year that's competing on the back end for that safety spot. So, it wasn't a given that he was going to win, but I think right now he's in the catbird seat. Obviously, summer, they'll battle it out. It's not set in stone, but in pencil, I'll write his name. He won the most improved award. And, sometimes awards, I don't really read too much into them, but spring awards, I kind of do sometimes, because if there's a surprise on there, that means that guy's doing something good. It reinforces what you hear through back channels and things like that. And he won it. So, hats off to him. Really good player that has a chance to come in, start, play the whole year, and be good at it. So I'd call him a riser in the spring. The next guy is obviously a veteran as well, as far as being around South Carolina. That's Judge Collier. Judge has gone from a true freshman with promise that surprisingly saw the field in 2023. Don't know that he knew exactly what he was doing. Then last year, all of a sudden, I thought that sometimes in coverage he would get beat, but then he was really good, physical, and that was a big difference last year with the corners. They were Swain, Collier, and Fortune all were very, very physical. Like, before that, a lot of times South Carolina, you'd attack them on the perimeter, and these guys would get beat. They didn't want any. The receivers would block them. They'd miss tackles. Not last season. Last season, teams would try it about once or twice and then couldn't make it happen. I'm not saying they shut them down every time, but those guys, I like that. You've had a lot of corners around here that can cover. Not a lot of corners that always put their face, to use a Muschampism, to put their face in the fan and like it. Well, Judge Collier does that. Physical kid, Rock Hill defensive back, geography. There's a geographic doctrine of the JC Shurburtt recruiting rules, or the recruiting constitution, if you will. Yeah, so he's good, and then you just hear about him getting better and better and better and better. In the spring, he could really be a shutdown top corner in the league next year, based on reports and based on what I've been told. So remember, he was a camp evaluation and came there, tested well, longer guy, good length. It's kind of how you draw him up. So there's Judge Collier, who I would consider to be a spring riser. Now, he's probably didn't really have to go win a starting job, although there's competition. So it's a core tenet of the program. We know that. Shane Beamer says that all the time. But he definitely solidified his starting position. And now the question becomes how good is he going to be compared to the rest of the SEC, the country, whatever. Judge Collier, very excited. I mean, this is a guy that if things go well for him, like go a certain way, they thread the needle performance-wise, he could be a draft guy next season after his third year. That's how high people are on Judge Collier. And then the third guy is Brandon Cisse. Not that When they signed him, they beat Ole Miss on him, brought him back from NC State. He's a Sumter kid, went to NC State, did some big things. He was kind of in the too good not to take category because you had some depth in the secondary. That Vakari Swain was out, but I think everybody kind of knew he would be back. You got Miles Norwood from Ball State as a depth piece and could be a starter. I thought he had a good spring, really good spring as well. So, you know, but you knew that. You knew he was good coming in, but you never know. I mean, how good is he compared to the rest of the? Well, he's really, really good. Now, right now, I would say he would start at one of the corners opposite Judge Collier. And is it because Vakari Swain missed the spring? Yeah, that's why. I think the coaching staff will get a nice comparison of the two and the competition, and they'll battle it out. Come fall camp, I would write that in pencil with an asterisk by it because I love Vakari Swain too. A shout out to the Queen of the Cocks from the show on the Nana Sports chat box. Club chief member loves Vakari Swain's his favorite player. And I think Vakari, I love him too. I think that guy, in fact, in my mind, figuring out how they're going to play Collier, Cisse, and Swain, it's like a Rubik's Cube. There's so many different options. I don't know exactly what they'll do, but hey, versatility is a good thing because if they'll let you sub on defense these days, you can get your right guys out there and really make it tough on a defense on obvious passing downs, obvious running downs, all that kind of stuff. But Cisse came in and just a baller. It's just nothing but positive feedback, and the talk about him has been nothing but positive. It's not a surprise. They won a big recruiting battle for him against Ole Miss. He's a player at NC State that played right away on special teams and then played corner and nickel, started for them really early in his career. So Brandon Cisse is going to be a ball player for the University of South Carolina. And I would say he's a stock up guy. Not that we didn't think he was good coming in, right? Not that he wasn't good, but it's kind of surpassed baseline expectations, which were high to begin with. So those are the three risers, I think, from the secondary, and then post spring practice. And then there's some other notes here and there, because obviously when things change, we talk about it, and you go through spring and things have changed, right? So, I would call those three risers, but Miles Norwood, a newcomer from Ball State, did some really nice things. Thought he looked really good in the spring game. There's Jelon Kilgore, and there's going to be a lot of questions about moving him back to safety still. I think that's in the, it's an option, but the guy found a home at nickel at the end of 2023. The defense got significantly better at the end of 2023. He had 5 interceptions last year at the nickel position. He's a good tackler. There's some people that have Jelon Kilgore going in the first round next year. You talked about early guys. I think it's because of the 5 picks. That's a lot of picks. Alabama game, that was heck, he had a big time play. The teams really stopped throwing at him some. And then I think Clemson kind of picked it back up after the Luther Burden catch, which scared the what out of everybody. But with Kilgore, I mean, how are you supposed to defend against that? The Luther Burden catch. And maybe there's some of you film junkies can say that there was some fundamental thing he wasn't doing. But Luther Burden was good. It was a great throw by Brady Cook, and Kilgore ended up getting the pick to seal the game at the end, which was retribution. But I think sometimes too, if they had lost that game, I think one of the criticisms I would have had would have been, just like in 2023, when you sometimes in critical situations, South Carolina would have a bad, other teams' passing games like Florida would exploit a bad matchup, I would kind of why is Jelon Kilgore in man to man with Luther Burden? Or sometimes maybe they have offensive coaches too. Sometimes maybe that's what you do. You try to force that. So, but that no harm, no foul, right? Whew, that game, goodness gracious, what a ball game. But anyway, so the question becomes like, so are you going to move him back? Just I mean, what are you going to just leave well enough alone? And I think that's the thought process from Clayton White and Torrey and Gray. It's like, you had this nickel position really hurt you, and you were rotating good players in. I mean, Nick Eamon-Warray was a nickel, and other teams really killed you. But Jelon Kilgore, Jalen Kilgore, I guess it's Jelon Kilgore, solidified it, you know. So I think that's going to be interesting to see because the other part of it is okay. So on passing downs, you could slide Cissé to nickel and have Collier and Swain out there. But how do you slide Kilgore back maybe and take DQ Smith off the field or Peyton Williams? I don't know. I don't know. That's like I said, it's like a Rubik's cube trying to figure all that out. Speaking of DQ Smith, Jamie Bradford, my partner in crime, the co-host of Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, Chief Sports, all that good stuff. Last year, his breakout player in the secondary was O'Donnell Fortune, and he ended up being right. I mean, O'Donnell had a really good year, despite the fact he didn't get drafted. I think he's going to probably stick somewhere, if not with the Giants, somewhere else. But his breakout performer is DQ Smith. So according to his contacts, DQ's had a fantastic spring. I think DQ on that note specifically, and I didn't include him in the risers just because that's not really like my information. It's more Jamie's. And then in his opinion, he's a riser. But he's been around a while. I think the key for him, we kind of got used to at times him making big plays. We had from the first time, 2022, he stepped on the field with a block punt against Georgia State. He was really good. He had an interception, pick six against Notre Dame in the bowl. That kind of thing. And DQ, this past year, everybody else made some. DQ wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't a guy. He's kind of quiet, I guess. Maybe that's how you put it. Now, like I said, sometimes defensive backs are quiet because they're doing their job. But I think this year a key for him, he's got to take a step forward, in my opinion. To do things like go to the NFL, that kind of thing. And I think that number one, I want to see him more physical and run support. He's a big guy. He's always had that physicality. Number two, some big plays. Whether that's on a tipped pass or just in coverage or whatever. I think it's important. I'm not saying DQ was down last year because he wasn't. He was really good and solid, played a ton. But I think with Nick gone and you have another 3-4 year starter back there, I believe that would be a 22, 23, 24, 4-year starter, veteran. There's leadership, there's things like that. So expectations should be pretty high for him this season. DQ Smith from Columbia, from Spring Valley High School, converted quarterback back there in the secondary. But do you take him off the field on passing downs? That would be my question. I don't know. That's those are all things they have to decide. Other guys back there, Zabari Sandy is backing up at nickel. He's a guy we've all kind of forgotten about from Washington, D.C. Another taller guy that looks pretty good in run support. Kelvin Hunter, obviously, is very physical, played some last year from West Florence, another Florence player, 4-star prospect coming out. Jalua Solomon is kind of a guy that can play all over. Year 2 expectations should be high for him. And I mentioned DeMarcus Leach, who is from Abbeville, who kind of projected as a safety out of high school, but they like him at corner, and he's got the hips and length to do it. And then Alex Jones, who I was talking about earlier, Kendall Daniels Jr., 4-star guy from Virginia, 6'4", 220. He predicts he'll play some. and get in the mix back there. So those are all kind of young, promising players, you know. So I think that, like I said, there's been risers back there. We've got more, I guess, concrete intel now about who's playing nickel, who's playing corner, who's playing safety. You know, Peyton Williams having a good spring, I think, is the projected starter back there with DQ Smith. It'll be interesting to see that battle at corner with Vakari Swain and Brandon Cisse. And then, you know, the Kilgore sliding back thing. Will it be something that they just do? I mean, I don't know. You know, how will that work? If they use it at all, they may not need to. May not need to. Of course, it helps the secondary if you have a good pass rush. And I think pass rushing wise, South Carolina's probably in pretty good shape. People, you know, fret about depth and things like that, but I think pass rushing wise is fine. It's the question will become with because you're so new in the middle with D tackle and linebacker. Can you stop the run? You know, is that and then at one of the ends, I think, can you set the edge? Yeah, I think Dylan Stewart can set the edge. I think when he's got a triple team and all, you know, and he'll tell you too. He said it before. He needs to get better against the run. And then the other side is it Brian Thomas Jr. How good is he going to be against her? You know, setting the edge is important because I mentioned those perimeter runs earlier, and teams when Carolina cannot set the edge, they just run all over you on the outside. So stopping the run with this defense, I think, is going to be, to me, just personally, that's the big key. And for the reasons I laid out, you know, I think secondary will be pretty good this year. And I think they'll be good in run support too. I'm not worried about that part of the secondary. It's just you don't want them to get to the secondary, right? A lot. Anyway, don't forget, Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show is coming up at 10 o'clock. John Strickland, Mike Morgan are in. Phil and I will be along after the morning show with the show. Lots of fun topics. The show is going to be fun today, hopefully, on a terrible Taco Tuesday. That's what we call it. For now, I'm off. I got to go get on 107.5 The Game with my man, Wild Bill Gunner and Preston Thorne at 7:15 Eastern. But this has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Have a great Tuesday, everyone. I'll holla at you soon.